It's that time again. We're talking Detroit Lions football on the Our Lads Football Network for the Our Lads Football YouTube channel. And when we're talking Detroit Lions football, you know it's time to talk with Jeff Risdon. How's it going, Jeff? That's it. You there? Can you hear me okay?
All right.
Oh, did it go out?
Having an issue with my
We're
connection.
live. You're really blowing it now, man. You can't hear me, I guess. Anyway, as Jeff figures this out, just want to remind everybody to subscribe to the channel, like and share. That's all the cool stuff. Jeff's been our Detroit Lions analyst for several years now. A lot of bad times, but the good times are obviously already under a really good offseason to find out how Detroit's going to take that next step. Matter of fact, behind me, you can see is the Detroit Lions podcast on YouTube that's running. Jeff does that several times, actually 3 times a week. Jeff's on there. You can check him out at thelionswire.com. As you can see there, Draft Wire. Jeff, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. My internet's being a little spotty right now, but hopefully we'll get through this okay.
That's okay. I was telling you just before, I was a couple minutes late because I plugged in my usual mics and everything, and I was like, why isn't my audio working? I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I haven't had this happen to me in weeks. What's going on here? And then all I had to do was just take it back out, put it back in, and it worked. So
we'll get through it.
Yeah, that's usually the first thing you should probably try, I guess, before going through all the other stuff. All right, anyway, let's talk Detroit Lions football, and we're going to talk about the NFL draft and the first big draft following or I should say the first draft following the first big season for Detroit and in a long time. And so this is the draft that was very important because there were still some holes that needed to be filled up. And hopefully between the offseason, including the draft, they were able to accomplish that. Did you give a grade to the Lions draft, Jeff?
Yeah. And, we had, obviously the acquisition of Carlton Davis via trade soaked up one of the third-round picks. So that was the primary big one. But then signing DJ Reader to fill the defensive tackle, that sort of filled the 2 biggest needs on the team before the draft. And it's kind of what you want to do. If you have the immediate holes and you can get guys that can fill them, the Lions went out and filled that. So that was important. And that set them up for the draft that they had, which was, so far so good. I'm happy with it. I like it.
Yeah, I gave them a B. So I thought, again, not a lot of picks, but I felt they were definitely above average, which a B is. And the main position that we're going to go over, obviously, this offseason is cornerback. So let's go ahead and do that. By the way, we're going to do 2 later on. Before I wrap up, we're going to talk a little bit about the schedule. So anybody that wants to find out a little bit more, and I'm sure you guys did your own schedule video, but we're going to do a couple minutes on that. And besides the draft picks, we're going to talk about any of the players that were signed after the draft that you believe could make an impact. Because it's always a player that is signed after the draft that ends up making the team or
got a couple. Happens every year in Detroit.
Well, and you hope maybe one of these days you always want that to happen. That's a sign of a really good scouting staff, no question about it. But I'm sure it's going to be a lot harder in years to come to make the roster as the roster gets as deep as it has been. And that's how you're successful during the season. So let's go ahead and kick things off with the 2 cornerbacks. So again, the Carlton Davis move before the draft, and then they add Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw in the first couple of rounds. Matter of fact, being able to get Arnold with the 24th overall pick.
Yeah.
Was it 24? So 24th overall pick? That, considering this is our lad's top-rated corner, and to be able to get that, the Lions staff must have been ecstatic. And a couple of things that I noticed, by the way, between Arnold and Rakestraw, when I take a look at the scouting report here at Our Lads, this is the draft guide, of course. You can still purchase at ourlads.com. Has all the scouting reports except the kid from BC, Canada. But, I mean, come on. Who has scouting report on that guy? So
nobody.
So when I look at the scouting reports, I see very similar keywords. I see aggressive. I see can make big hits and I see ascending talent, which is probably the biggest one most of all for both of them.
Absolutely, and that certainly fits Arnold. And yes, it was a big surprise that they were able to trade up even to get him at where they did. Picking 29th, we knew, like we collectively, we all knew the Lions really liked him and saw, this is exactly the kind of guy that they want. But we're like, are they going to be able to? Will they have the firepower to trade up to 14 just as an arbitrary number to get him?
Oh yeah,
and I'm like, I don't think they're going to do that. And then with was it the first 13, 14 picks were all offense. We're like, oh, okay, maybe this is going to get a little bit easier. It was, we also knew that they also Quinyon Mitchell, tremendous amount of appeal for what the Lions wanted as well. So for me, I had them ranked literally right next to each other. I believe they were number 10 and number 11 overall for me.
Okay.
In my overall ranking. So I'm like, okay, well, either one, I'm good. Like, I'm fine. But I don't expect you to be able to get that. But my goodness, they moved up. They got it. I'm happy that they were aggressive in going to get Terrion Arnold. I thought he was the much better fit of the two Alabama corners. And I don't mean that in any disrespect to Kool-Aid McKinstry at all, because I think there's just a good football player there too. But Terrion's, his aggressiveness, his swagger, his mentality of like, if that ball's in the air, it's mine. That's what the Lions want. And the ability to press, to disrupt off the line of scrimmage, that's something that they just didn't do very well last year. They tried at times, but in fact, they wound up playing more zone than they wanted to because the guys just couldn't get it done. And with Davis coming in, and now with Terrion Arnold on the outside, you've got some guys that can really disrupt. And your second round pick, Rakestraw, can do it too. Very physical, more physical than what you would expect out of their body type. And that's, if you're looking at these two guys, the one thing that does stand out, not so much with Arnold, but more with Rakestraw, is he's a little skinny, a little lanky, but he's not weak. And that's something that stood out in his Missouri tape, was that there's, he doesn't know that he only weighs 185 pounds for whatever it is, being a little under 6 feet tall. There's some fight to these guys, and the mentality that they have. Arnold is very outgoing, very gregarious. Rakestraw, not so much. There's sort of a yin and a yang with them, but style-wise on the field, they fit together very nicely.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's similar, is like you're saying, the size, both being 5'11", both being in the 180s. So very interesting that they one thing I did notice, though, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Arnold seemed to be more experienced and successful in press. Rakestraw the opposite, that a little bit more zone guy. But again, when you're talking about guys, that's why the word ascending talent is so important. That means that's usually a player that has also got the ability to be coached up. It doesn't have to be pigeonholed into one specific scheme. If you think he's good here, you probably think you can make him good there. And that's what apparently they were able to get, including guys that can play multiple spots, because both of them can play outside. They've had experience inside. Matter of fact, Arnold, of course, was a converted safety.
Exactly. And early on, it looks like, and keep in mind, Rakestraw has been injured. He's coming off of core muscle surgery, so he hasn't been fully cleared for participation yet. He's already getting looks on the inside, and that's
okay.
That makes some sense with where the Lions' depth is, because they also brought in Mekhi Robertson from the Raiders.
Oh yeah.
He's very small, but he's an outside only guy. He is absolutely not a slot player. The Raiders found that out the hard way. Just because he's 5'8" doesn't mean that he has to play inside. He actually is much better on the outside. So the reps have been going there, and then they did bring Kindle Vildor back. He's, he took some lumps in the postseason. The fans are a little down on him. I get it. I was too. But he's much more of an outside guy. So where the depth they needed was on the inside. If Brian Branch, who is your slot and was spectacular at it as a rookie, if he needs to play more safety, they have somebody who can come in with some level of ability and a little bit of experience playing inside in Rakestraw and let him play inside. So he's sort of getting cross-trained a little bit. Because frankly, if Arnold is who they think he is on the outside, and who I think he is as well, with Carlton Davis and with Mekhi Robertson, he'd be number 4 on the outside. If you can get him on the field as your number 2 in the slot, or maybe, if you want to let Branch freelance a little bit or play more safety as they need, because the depth at safety is kind of rough. That's not a bad thing at all in his case.
No, and looking at the ourlads.com depth chart for the Lions, this offseason is just done. The Lions have done a very good job of just adding so much more talent and depth to that secondary, which, as we've talked about, this being a major issue for years. So
absolutely, they've done it smartly too, in bringing in guys who can play what they want them to play. When they rolled the dice with Jeff Okudah back in the day, different regime, obviously different, coaching staff and everything, but I don't think they really had a plan for how to play him, other than like, oh, he was good at Ohio State, he'll be good here. Like, well, they didn't really process why he was good at Ohio State or what he did well at Ohio State and let him do that in the NFL as well. I'm not some of that's certainly on Jeff Okudah, like, no question about that, but they did a really good job here of finding player fits, mentality fits, coaching style fits, guys that are going to respond to what they need them to do. And Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator and former NFL DB, a great one. He's really happy. It's one of the first things that you notice around the facility is Aaron Glenn's got a little bit more giddy up in his gait right now. He's feeling pretty good about what he's got now. And he hasn't had that for a while.
Yeah, they now have a complete roster depth chart wise defensively, and that is something that's going to be very interesting to see how it improves the overall team, because that was definitely the one thing that was lacking, and if these guys hit, the Lions are going to be in great shape. Okay, let's stick with defense and talk about the only other player that they drafted on defense, because there's only 6 picks, and that was the kid from LSU, Wingo, and a little undersized, but I'm sure they've got a plan for him. And when you're that undersized for that position, you better be a highly athletic player. And that's exactly what Wingo will bring to the table, besides, of course, his versatility and also a team captain, which is something that is always kind of like cherry on top.
Oh, absolutely. He wore number 18 at LSU. If you follow LSU football at all, you know what that means. That means that you're getting a dude. A guy who transcends what he does on the football field and does it also off the football field. And that's something that the Lions pay a freakish amount of attention to. And I mean that in a good way. They are getting guys that want to be that. They want that leadership. They want that camaraderie. They want that drive. And that's Wingo. He will play. So they run a base 4-man front, but it does mix up sometimes. They move guys around. They have run with a 5-man front before, and in a 5-man front, he will be one of your 2 wings, so to speak. He can line up anywhere between the 3 and the 7, and we'll probably see him to be doing that. And that's an area where there's room for him to make a splash right away, because Levi Onwuzurike, with all of his injuries, with his neck fusion surgery, has never really panned out. He's still there and he's got a shot, but there's room for that interior rush presence. And it feels like they're making Josh Paschal play more outside this year.
Okay.
I know when he came out of Kentucky, I believe he was in the 270 range. He's got to be no more than 265 now. So I wouldn't expect to see a lot of him inside as much as he's played in his first couple seasons, and he's been hurt a lot too. So there's a path for Wingo to play a lot right away, even though he's a late round pick.
And what about the kid from last year's draft, Martin?
Broderick Martin.
Yeah.
Healthy scratch almost his entire rookie season. Coming out of Western Kentucky, this was a guy who a lot of us in the draft community sort of were like, okay, like I remember watching him play, but I didn't study him all that much because I didn't think he was going to get drafted nearly that high. He has lost quite a bit of the fat around like face, neck, shoulders, upper body. He talked about it. I got to stand next to him on last Thursday after one of the OTA sessions. He weighs near the same as what he did, but he's reshaped it, and it looks a lot better. And he talked about we have a new defensive line coach, and Terrell Williams came from the Titans, where he worked with Tyir Tart, and that's sort of the model for him right now, is to make him into Tyir Tart Part 2.0. And if the Lions get that, they're in pretty good shape, because That's a pretty good football player. Now he's got some work to do. He's got to learn on keeping his pads down and getting a little bit more violent with his hands. He's already talked about that. That's what Terrell wants him to do. We'll see how well he can do it in the second season. He's certainly got the attitude for it. He's a sponge. He's trying very hard to make sure that it works. And if he's your backup nose tackle in year 2 and can get on the field for 10, 15, maybe 25 plays in a game if you have to, if DJ Reader needs a spell or Lee McNeil, into that rotation, the Lions are going to be that much better for it. And that seems to be the goal, is to have him be that sort of third or fourth interior guy, play a lot against the run, maybe get in, in the 5-man packages if you want to go jumbo, goal line, things like that. So not a full-time player, but a guy that has a definite role.
Yeah, and maybe this is going to be a habit now for the Lions with the draft, because we're going to get into their third pick. That was kind of from left field, and that's really what Martin was, as you pretty much alluded to. He was somebody that a lot of people thought, well, maybe he's just a free agent, and then yet the Lions liked him enough to take him in round 3. So hey, they like somebody, they're going to take him. They don't care about the noise, and so I see no reason to. Well, one more before we do go to that kid, and that is because they signed Pecco from Tennessee. Does he have like a serious role in the team, or is he more like just veteran insurance?
He is much more veteran insurance, I would say. Remember, they brought in Tyson Alualu at the end of last season. Nico was sort of that guy. Now he can play his way up. There's mobility for him if he's good. If he's still got a lot to offer, he can push Anzarike off the team. That's sort of where his function point is. But ideally, they would like it if he probably didn't make it.
Yeah. Yes.
But it's one of those things. And this is a problem that good teams have that the Lions haven't really experienced before. We're used to. I was talking the other day with a friend who's covered the Lions for a long time. Go back, 5-10 years. Like, your 7th round picks, not only did they have to make it, they had to play like a lot. Like we were counting on 3rd, 4th round, 5th round guys. They had to start as rookies. Like now we're happy if they make the team. It's a very strange. It requires some mental transition from us, and expectate the difference in expectations for guys that are coming in that are projects, and we're about to talk about a big one.
Yes. As a matter of fact, what you have to do is take a look at like 2 players like Rodriguez and Vildor. And a couple of years ago, these guys would be starting.
Rodrigo did start as a rookie, and now he's number 5 on the depth chart. And I will add, he's really good.
Yes.
Like he would start on other teams, but the fact that he got thrust in, they kind of got a little bit lucky with the fact that he was so ready to go coming out of Oklahoma State. But now they don't need him to start, but they have that kind of depth. It's crazy to me that on the last podcast mailbag, somebody asked what the deepest position was, and I said linebacker, and nobody in the history of the Detroit Lions would have ever said that until this year.
Crazy, but crazy good. Okay.
Yes.
Let's talk about this kid from Canada. So, what was the general reaction? What was your reaction when you saw that they had picked this player?
So I knew who he was. Like when they said Giovanni Manu, he goes by Gio. We'll still keep calling him Giovanni because it's just easier for me to process that way. I knew that they had done a pre-draft visit with him. So, and I had written that up. So I'm like, okay, I'm familiar with the player. I knew that he was coming not from the BC Lions, but the University of British Columbia. I had to learn what that school was. But up until after they drafted him, I had only ever seen the highlight tape that was circling around there on YouTube that everybody else has seen. So it was like, my God, he looks really impressive athletically, but he's playing against Canadian college, and I'll equate it to I live in an area where D3 football is very big here. I live right down the street from Hope College, very good D3 program and a good D3 conference. I would guess that more players in the conference that Hope College is in are more advanced football-wise than what he played against in Canada.
Okay.
So you're dealing with a very steep learning curve for Manu coming from where he's at. But if you, and I will say this, when we went to rookie minicamp, all of us in the media were just like, okay, let's look at him. And look, I've used this line before, but it fits him so much. He looks like he came out of the womb lifting weights. Like, my God, for being 6'8" and 350 some pounds, there's no fat on this guy, like none. It's weird. And he moves so well. Like, you instantly see the appeal, but you're also like, okay, when you watch him play, like the first 3 reps that he had, guilty of really egregious holding penalties. So there's a lot of work to be done, but the athletic potential is there. And, that's what you bet on. When you've got an offensive line coach like Hank Fraley and the track record of development that they have, that's what you play to. Yeah. So it's interesting. My reaction was, this is probably 3 rounds too early for this, but it came out later that, like, other teams, teams like the Eagles, the Chargers, they were seriously interested, and maybe not quite that early, but where the Lions picked him. Remember, they traded up to get into that, and then they also traded up to get that next pick as well, because they had traded out of that 3rd round pick to get Carlton Davis earlier. So they were sort of in a bind where, like, okay, we have a willing buyer here to trade with. Let's make the move and let's shoot our shot.
So what do you think the plan is? Obviously, you've got a potential lifer ahead of him on the depth chart. Will Sewell transition to left tackle when Decker's career is over, or will they just look for a left tackle somehow? What's the future like?
So that's a good question, and it's been answered both ways by different people at different times. So I don't think that I shouldn't say that. I think they know what they want to do, but I don't think they've communicated that to us clearly. I think Panay knows what's going to happen. I think Taylor Decker knows. Like, I think they have an organizational plan. We're unfortunately not privy to it. My guess is he's the best right tackle in football. Don't fool with that.
Yeah, sure.
And that would kind of be my hope.
Yeah. Understood. Yeah. I mean, we're seeing that with several other teams. The Chiefs are 2-time Super Bowl champs. That's a perfect example right there of what they're going through in camp this year. Taylor is more comfortable at right tackle. You stay there. We're going to make sure that even though, the one spot on our offensive line is like the big mystery, that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, and Taylor Decker, by the way, is still doing really great at left tackle, so there's no reason to push there. They did need depth, though. Their 3rd tackle from last year, Matt Nelson, is with the Giants now. God help the Giants. Good luck with that. Dan Skipper is back. Dan Skipper doesn't play tackle. He plays as the extra offensive lineman. He doesn't, like, if Sewell or Decker were to go down, he wouldn't have been the fill-in tackle last year. So he's back, but he's much more of a package player rather than a full-time substitute. And I don't know if Giovanni Manu is going to be that guy this year. If it is, he's going to have to grow up really fast. But that is long-term. I think they want to see where he can go. And it sounds like they're going to try him some at guard. We haven't really seen a lot of it yet. We've only had 2 open practices. We do get mandatory minicamp this coming week. So hopefully we see him where they're going to use him a little bit more. But he's a project. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he doesn't play at all as a rookie. And much like Broderick Martin last year, I think Broderick got in the 3 games. I think he played, I want to say it was like something like 50 snaps. That might be the case for your 3rd round pick this year too. Or 4th round pick. They traded the 3rd round next year to get him. Okay. That's again, that's a good team problem. You can't do that if you're 3-13 or coming out of last place and trying to grow.
You'll be fired if you do that. If you're 3-13.
Yes, you will.
Yeah. So what about the other 2? Because and we'll go right to Mahogany, because obviously he's up front as well on the offensive line. And then there's also the free agent that they picked up. Where's that kid from Florida?
Eguakun. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. So talk about both of those guys, especially Mahogany, because a couple of years ago, before the injury, people were targeting. This is why trying to forecast who's going to be, a 1st round pick in 2 years from now, or next year, very, very hard to do. I know Arledge just tries not to do it, even though we're like trying to put the new generation, we're trying to push them to do it. Not because we don't think that, they're we want to make them look bad, because it's hard to do. And I think that's why they don't want to forecast something that's so far out, but people want to see it.
They do.
That's why
I can attest to that. Yeah, the draft wire portion of my job is great evidence of that. We can put out a 2026 mock draft right now where I will have heard of maybe 5 of the players.
Right. Yeah.
And it will get more reads than any in-depth analysis I do on anybody that got drafted this year. That's just the nature of the business. But I loved Christian Mahogany. Was my favorite pick. He was a top 50 talent for me. I would have been happy taking him in the second round. He is he's a war daddy, man. He's going to come in. He is going to create a lot of movement in the run game. Doesn't matter who's across from him. He's moving them. That's what he does. He needs a little bit of help with his hands and balance and pass protection. But, man, there's so much to like about what he does. And great fit culture-wise for this offensive line. He's coming in and replacing Jonah Jackson. He's wearing the same number, and I swear to God, the first day of rookie minicamp when we walked in, we're like, what's Jonah doing here? And, it's like they haven't lost anything. And I don't want to, because Jonah Jackson was a Pro Bowler in 2022 and a deserving one. And I don't want to put that level of expectation on Christian Mahogany. But by the same token, there's no reason he can't be that guy. None.
Yeah. I mean, is it his inconsistency that is the biggest issue? Is that what brings him down to the 6th round? Because I agree with you. I mean, like I was saying, this kid was supposed to be a couple years ago before the injury, 1st-round draft pick. That's what they were saying. Yeah. Then he gets injured, and 2023, not so good. Didn't really go as well as planned, but still, I mean, fair. Yeah. I mean, why do you think why do you think he was graded so low, and that's where he went?
I will say he is smaller in person than you would think he is. And I say that, he's still a big guy, but the reach, and when you see him standing between Penei Sewell and Frank Ragnow, who are both like giant, taller guys for their positions, you kind of like, okay, all right, I see. Doesn't have the reach, doesn't have he's got a little bit of a sloppy body to him. Relative
he's not
to
chiseled yet, huh?
Yeah. Relative to other players at that position that were in this draft, even the undrafted guys they brought in, Egukun and also Brian Hudson out of Louisville, who's a guy he's getting looks, and the fact that he's played some center is getting him some looks as well. Because tell you what, that backup center role is wide open, and that's where an undrafted guy can make a dent. He's a little beefier than those guys, and maybe not as instantly quick. But athleticism is funny. I think he had a pretty good RAS grade score with his athleticism, but if you watch him play, maybe not as great in practice as it is on paper. Doesn't mean that he's a bad athlete, but I think that the loftiness of the expectations is probably not quite where his game is yet, recovering from the knee injury that he had.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll find out right away. We'll see.
We will. He is your top interior reserve, though, and in Detroit that means you play a lot because injuries happen every year.
And that also includes the fact that you drafted a kid 1 round earlier last year.
Yeah, Colby Sorsdal.
Yeah. So does that mean that he just is still not sure what you got there?
Exactly. And I will harken back to last week at OTAs. He played in one practice session every spot but center. They're figuring out where he fits best. He was a tackle at William & Mary. They tried to move him to guard last year. Now, because the tackle depth chart is the way such it is, I think my thought is that they're trying to make him the backup tackle, but also not like don't lose the guard training that you get, because you might need that too. He's a work in progress. He's another guy like Broderick Martin, coming from a smaller program, not necessarily a football powerhouse or factory, where he's had to reshape his body a little bit. And you can kind of see that going on with Colby Sorsdal too. So it's going to be interesting to see. Big summer for him on his future with the team. He can absolutely earn that number 3 offensive tackle gig. But if he doesn't develop the way that they need, could be another year where he's bouncing between the practice squad and the active roster and stuff like that.
Would you put then right now going into camp? Is he the number 3 tackle?
I would say, yeah. He's ahead of Manu. And this is one of the curious things is as we're trying to do the roster gymnastics of how do you get to 53 when you have a rookie offensive tackle that you drafted that high that you don't expect to be able to play right away. That's an interesting mix, how they're going to figure that out, because then you also still have Dan Skipper. If he's going to make the team, he's the best number 6 offensive lineman in football. But can he carry all those guys with such limited usage?
Okay.
We're trying to figure that out. So we'll learn that one together.
All right. Now, when they drafted the last guy to talk about, Vaki, when they drafted him, did they always give a position? Did Detroit say running back?
Yes.
Okay.
And they've made it very clear he is only playing running back.
That's it.
Now, he's on the team for special teams. He's the number 4 running back. But he will never leave the field on special teams. And he's shown that already. He might be the return man. We don't know how that's going to play out. There's a lot of guys that can do that on this roster. And that's going to be a camp competition this summer. Okay. But he's going to be in that mix, and he will be on the coverage units. And if he's not the return man, he's going to play a lot as a blocking, with the new, especially the kickoffs. That's where he's really going to earn his NFL. I hate to compare him to a guy like Matthew Slater, because who's got a chance to go to the Hall of Fame despite never playing on offense.
Oh yeah.
But Vaki could have that level of impact on the Lions special teams with the way that they've changed things. And they let a couple of guys who were only on the roster for special teams go this offseason, guys like Chase Lucas and Anthony Pittman. He can fill their roles very immediately. And so far, he's already shown that it's natural.
Do you think he is going to remain the number 4 running back when camp is done? Craig Reynolds, because that's a nice little battle there.
It is,
because we know Vaki will make the team, but you have Reynolds, nice little veteran, and when you see him, he makes plays here and there. But then you got the other young kids, including they still have Jefferson.
They do,
and Knight showed up and before he got hurt. So is that going to be a battle between those 3 or 4 kids on the depth chart right now for that final spot?
Absolutely. And also, how many do they keep? Because we just talked about the logjam that they have at offensive line. Do they have to keep an extra one there? Does that subtract somebody from the running back room? Does it cut somebody from the cornerback room? That remains to be seen, but that's going to be one of the things that we're watching this summer is, Vaki could absolutely beat out Craig Reynolds for that job if he shows enough as a running back. And again, nothing against Craig Reynolds. I'm a big Craig Reynolds fan. I've been beating his drum for a long time. But if Vaki is better than him, they're not going to keep him just to keep him.
That's why it's so great to get guys like Vaki, because he can fill several roles on your roster and your depth chart. And that's exactly why you pick guys like that in the middle to later rounds. It just helps you save money. So, Okay. Let's continue then with the free agents. We talked about Egukon from Florida. So he looks like he's a guy that, you think he's going to make the team. It just makes sense.
They paid him a lot.
They played him a lot. Yes. So that would make sense.
And all the centers that are there, they're fighting for one job, and there is a spot that the backup center, Michael Neese, who came over from the Buccaneers, I think he was with the Jets for a cup of coffee as well, has been the backup center, but that's a role that's there for the taking, and they would love it if one of the UDFAs sees that. So that's certainly a spot where, of all the undrafted free agents, that's the most likely landing spot for anybody on the active roster is that backup center role.
And as far as some more of these signings, 2 of them, the wide receivers, Calhoun and Juice Williams. Now, if you're a big college fan, Juice started off as like a hot shot, pretty high recruit for Illinois, a quarterback, didn't work out there. And then all of a sudden you saw him show up at wide receiver, and good for him. He made the transition and did a really nice job there for Illinois. And that was a nice little story. And Calhoun had a pretty good last couple of years for Duke. So, but Williams, you give him a shot to make the team?
Yes, I do. And he could very well be your punt and kick return man as well as the backup slot receiver behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. Not that gets you on the field very much because Amon-Ra's an all-pro, but he has looked the part. That's another guy that they paid over $200,000 to. He's actually earning more than 7th-round picks. Shows some level of commitment. I would lean more towards him being on the team than not. And Calhoun, good football player. And has looked good from what we've seen thus far in camp too. They find receivers that way. They had Drummond last year from Eastern Michigan who wound up being on the Giants roster after he didn't make it in Detroit. They have an eye for those kind of guys. So it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't make it in Detroit, if he winds up somewhere else. He's shown that much already.
All right. And then on defense, talk about, would Steel Chambers, would he be the top candidate to make it?
Yeah.
He would. Okay.
He probably. Ugu has a shot though.
Okay.
They're not necessarily wedded to their depth on the outside. They got rid of both the O'Quara brothers this past offseason. Charles Harris is gone. So there's room for somebody to, if they can make a splash, with Pascal and James Houston is coming off of an injury and coming back, and expectations are very hopeful for James Houston. But if it's not there, they've got a couple guys in there now that can challenge that. I personally expect James Houston to be fine. I don't expect him to get 8 sacks in 6 games again like he did at the end of his rookie season.
Now.
But he's certainly a fun player to watch. And watching him get back, he's still injured right now. He was working off on the side with trainers last week. Hopefully he's cleared soon because he does need the experience. He needs some reps, but there's a chance if you can make a splash, you can make the team there.
Yeah, Chambers is actually the guy that, out of all of the free agents, that had the highest grade. Our lads pegged him as a potential 4th-round draft pick. So to be able to pick him up after the draft was nice. And look, you have a lot of experience there at Ohio State, and that's good. Yeah, and that's going to get you there's a lot of opportunities. Now, look, as a Michigan fan, and just college football fan, he never really took the next step of being somebody that was going to be, say, special or early round pick or anything like that. But still, not even drafted. You would think
it was surprising. It was surprising to me that he went undrafted as well. And he's going to be one of those guys. Trevor Nowatzki from Saginaw Valley State made this team last year as an undrafted rookie because he was indispensable on special teams. That's recurring theme here. That's where Steel Chambers is going to make it or not.
Yep. And you mentioned Akwu. So why do you think he has? And I know you mentioned the other guys, but for him specifically, what have you noticed that gives you that thinking?
The thing that I liked about him is that he can go speed to power, but he can also go power to speed. He's not necessarily a one-note type of pass rusher. And I think that sort of diversity will get him where, okay, I can back up James Houston, who's very much a speed to power guy, or I can back up Josh Pascal, who's more of a power to speed guy. They can sort of fit him in the depth chart in a number of different spots rather than just in a singular role.
And would that be it? Would you say Egukon, Williams, Calhoun, Chambers, and Akwu? Those would be your likely candidates.
Nate Lynn has looked good every time I've seen him, so I don't want to rule him out either. But he's got an uphill battle at the depth chart where he's trying to get in at.
Okay. Now, and just also want to everything is there's nothing else to do on special teams. The main thing is to find returners. But are they set at place kicker?
Probably.
Okay.
Lions fans will dispute that. I think Michael Badger is going to be fine. I think he will get challenged. And whether it's James Turner, the undrafted rookie from Michigan, or if they go after Jake Bates from the Michigan Panthers of the UFL, who has had a phenomenal amount of success kicking in Ford Field, wouldn't surprise people. But Badgley's he's earned the trust of the coaching staff. And I know Lions fans are like, well, then why didn't they use him? That's a coaching decision. That's not not related to who he is. That's related to Dan Campbell's attitude and towards kicking more than anything. And that's that's the cost of doing business with Dan Campbell as your coach. You gotta deal with the fact that he's going to be hyper aggressive in chasing points.
That's it.
Yeah. 6 is more than 3, as he's pointed out a couple times.
Yes. Okay.
I will say,
go ahead.
Long snapper.
Oh, okay.
Hogan Hatton can win that job.
Oh, there you go. There's another one.
Yeah.
And why is that? Is that because of a combination of him and Daly, or one or the other?
Yeah, Daly's coming off of an injury. I will say in the practice that we saw last week, Hatton was better. Now, it's one practice. It's in the spring. They're not in pads.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're wedded to Scott Daly if Hatton is just as good and they can save $500,000 here or there. That's not insignificant.
No, it's not. Okay. Let's wrap up. And I want to talk about the schedule. Yeah. So what was your first impression? Let's move this into here. What was your first impression of the schedule when you looked at it? What stuck out? What's the headline? What's the story?
So they got a lot of primetime games, and that's something that we're not used to in Detroit. And that's something that we're going to have to get used to. You look week 1, the Rams right away. Matthew Stafford coming back to Detroit, and after we won our first playoff game in 33 years.
Yeah,
over them. That's gonna be fun. Tampa Bay, good football team. We beat them in the postseason last year too. So you got 2 postseason rematches right off the bat. You got a lot of home games clustered, and then you get that giant. There's a cluster in the middle where they're on the road a lot, especially right after their early bye. And coming out, you got at Dallas, at Minnesota, scrolling there. You got Tennessee, then you got your AFC South battles. I believe it's 6 road games in 8 weeks. Ooh. If I'm not mistaken. And some, again, at Dallas, at Houston, that's a really good football team in Houston. At Green Bay, that's probably going to be a really good football team in Green Bay. Like that's going to be tough, especially with the early bye. You don't get that break on it so much. I would have liked the bye to be week 8, week 9 would have been better for me, but it is what it is. And then at the end, you get Monday night, the last Monday night football game, week 17 in San Francisco. There's a chance that could be for the number 1 seed. There's a chance that could be for a division title for either team or both teams. I don't like being Monday night football that late in the year because the next week, every game's a noon game or every game's a Sunday game. So you're going to lose some advantage there going into your last game against Minnesota. Maybe that game won't mean anything. Hopefully it doesn't for the Lions. Hopefully they've got the division title wrapped up. But, the Vikings are playing, 38 hours earlier the week before. I don't like that. I just don't.
That's a big edge. So where's the home? Okay, if they get 6 out of 8 on the road, where's the home edge? Early in the season?
Early, and then right after that series, you get the Thanksgiving game. You get Green Bay coming in. You get your divisional home games out of the way later in the year, which is nice. You kind of want that. There are only 3 outdoor games. If you know Jared Goff's career splits between inside and outside, you'll know that's a very good thing for Detroit that he's playing more indoors. I expect this team to be very good.
Yes.
And I expect them to be up for the challenge, but it's not a cake schedule. It's the first time we've ever had a first place schedule in Detroit.
That's the way it works.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, look, I think this is, just taking a look at here. I mean, you have that, like you mentioned with the Thanksgiving day. So you've got the Thanksgiving home, Thursday again with the Packers at home, and then Buffalo at home.
Yeah.
So, those are, and who knows, Chicago, even though I think they're being a little overrated right now in my book.
Do you agree?
They should be.
They've gotten better.
Yes,
no doubt.
The coaching staff did a really nice job at the end of the season. We all noticed that. but it's still a rookie quarterback, and I don't think they're Houston. I just don't.
I agree.
Especially because Houston didn't have to deal with Detroit and Green Bay in the division last year.
Yes. Yeah,
so,
still don't this year either, probably.
No.
So yeah, and Buffalo, and I've said this before. I think there are two teams on their schedule that didn't get better from last year. Dallas is one, and Buffalo is the other.
Yeah, you're right.
And that doesn't mean that those teams are bad.
No.
They're still very formidable, but I'm not sure that they got any better. So those are games that if you looked at that schedule on paper, you're probably like, oh, maybe that doesn't look so good. But those games don't look as difficult when you look through the prism of what those teams have gone through this past offseason with Stephon Diggs now being in Houston, with Dallas not really doing anything, just as Cowboys fans lament all the time. It's dangerous when you play the schedule game early because you never know what teams are going to be. You don't know who the surprise. Like, for all I know, I don't think the Indianapolis Colts are going to be all that great this year. They could wind up going 14-3. They do have that ability with Anthony Richardson coming back. So you got to be real careful about that. But I think this is a double-digit win team for sure and should repeat as the NFC North champs.
And very important to get off to that good start because that's the other part, the home part, is being able to come out with 3 out of 4 at home. And even though the bye's early, the fact is basically you've got one road game. You're leaving Detroit once before the second week of October. So it may not be what you want, but you've got to take advantage of it.
You got to make some hay there. And this team has struggled for a long time against Seattle. That's a big win. The Lions have never beaten the Tennessee Titans ever.
Oh, okay.
That needs to change this year too.
Yes. All right. The last thing I want to ask you is: do you think that the Lions are done as far as adding any notable free agents? And is there a position left on the depth chart that you think I'm a little bit concerned with, and then maybe that's the spot that they may look at, especially if there is an injury?
I would still love to see them add a veteran safety to the group.
Okay.
But I'm not sure that they share that sentiment. It wouldn't surprise me if they just went with what they had, unless there's an injury and they're forced to bring in a guy like Quandre Diggs, former Lion, would be great. Justin Simmons would be outstanding. I don't think that they're going to pay what he's looking for to get him in here. I think other teams are going to have a higher degree of demand for him, but there is certainly a spot for a veteran safety on this team who can come in and sort of play. He can play the single high role. He can play a split role. He can play a box role. If you got somebody like that, a versatile veteran who can, buy you depth and also mentor, this is still a very young football team. The starters, you got Kirby Joseph and Ifeatu Melifonwu. They're both young.
Yep.
Melifonwu took a big jump at the end of last season when they decided to only play him in the box. And we're hopeful that carries over because he was a real asset and he hadn't been to that point. So hopefully that persists and carries forward because that might end up being a really good mix because Kirby Joseph is a coverage-only safety. He's not a guy that you want in the box. So if
you can use somebody back there with a little flexibility that can do both.
Yeah, exactly. And Brandon Joseph, an undrafted rookie last year, who's still around. I expect him to make the team, but he's another guy you really don't want him tackling. You just don't. You want him covering. So if they could get a more all-around type of guy, maybe C.J. Moore coming back after his year off the suspension from the gambling is that guy. We'll see. But I would be happy if they brought someone in. I'm not sure that they share that urgency.
Okay. Well, that is the one spot that just happens to have the most name free agents available is safety, defensive back. Those are especially safety. And they're going to be guys available. And look, if one injury does occur, then maybe that's the trigger point of, all right, well, we got to get someone. But because like you're saying, I mean, you're talking about, but what does happen if there's an injury? Now maybe it's because there's enough of guys to choose from. And like you said, some of these guys are looking maybe for more money than, and it's one of those struggles. You go back and forth with the agents and that's June. Let's just wait for somebody to get hurt. And then price goes up. I'll get what I want. No rush right now. So we'll see how that works out. But anyway, the Lions are looking real good. We're going to talk, of course, one more time at the very least before the season begins and get your take on how camp went the summer and so forth. So in the meantime, for everybody that's an RLAD subscriber already, and as well you should be, again, behind me, you see that's the Detroit Lions podcast going on right now with Jeff. He does a live show once a week. He does about 3 total a week on the channel. Matter of fact, on my YouTube channel, Prime Sports Network, you have those sites on the bottom of your channel of where you think fans should go. And we have the Detroit Lions up there as one of them. So that's how much we respect the channel and the work you do, Jeff. And always great having you here on the show. And you helped me out to get ready to put my draft review guide's over there, but to get ready for the 2024 draft review guide that's coming out in a couple of weeks. Actually, yeah, I got to get the deadlines like 2 days. So we got you in just on time.
All right,
so
good.
I put the Detroit Lions notes that I went over here on our interview to good use. So I appreciate that as always, Jeff. And I look forward to talking to you in a few months.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me in. Appreciate it.
You got it, Jeff. All right. Thank you. And again, don't forget, subscribe, like, and share if you haven't already. And we'll see everybody again. If you're just coming back for your Detroit Lions fix, then we'll see you back when Jeff's here. Otherwise, we'll see everybody else real soon.